Good morning, everybody. It's 11 o'clock. This is the town hall meeting for the 2023, 2024 recommended budget. This is an opportunity for the homeowners association to make any comments or, of course, any questions from the board. Steve Phillips, our controller, Linda Martin, our executive manager of facilities and administration, and myself will do a presentation today of the overall budget. We will certainly answer any questions that anybody has. Okay? So with that said, let me just check the agenda. Let's start off. So you want to start call to order?
Yeah, technically, we've actually already called the meeting in order, but I will officially call this board meeting or this town hall meeting in order. Let's rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag
I,
of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I'm going to take liberties with Robert's rules and basically say we already know what the agenda is. Since it's not an official board meeting and more of a town hall meeting, unless there is a consensus among the folks up here that we're not going to do something that's currently on the agenda, I say we approve the agenda as amended or as presented.
so moved.
All right. Any other comments
Okay.
and questions on that?
No?
All right. And then, John, I'm going to turn the meeting over to you and
Thank you, Doug. Okay, so we have a couple slides that we put together more at the summarizing everything, but like I said, we will answer any questions, take any comments. So the first slide, I've started off with this probably the last 2 years. It still is something that definitely affects everything we do, as well as everybody else, whether corporations or any municipality or homeowners association. In preparing this budget, and even in the year I'm in now or we're in, we definitely have headwinds. There's no question about it, but it's the same headwinds. It's no different for anybody else. We certainly have seen inflation. Hopefully that is going down, but we certainly got hit with inflation this year, and it did show up in this budget as well as the actuals for this year. Minimum wage, as you all know, over the last several years and continuing over the next couple of years, the statutory minimum wage will be increasing. That increase affects us on the high side because the majority of our employees, especially during the summer, are affected by the minimum wage, whether it's aquatics, food and beverage, golf course. So when the statutory wage goes up, it has an effect on the budget. And we saw that when we were in budget and finance and when we had the discussions with the board. Steve prepared analysis for us that broke all that out. And you can see that was a big number that we covered in this budget. Mark to market, I've had this in there since I've been here in 2019. We evaluated the staff, which I feel, and I believe the board and everybody else, are valuable assets, just like our infrastructure. And there was work for us to do back in 2019. We said we would do it over the years. I believe we have done that. But obviously there is a cost for that, but there certainly is on the other side where we've had some really good initiatives, bold moves that have certainly saved on the other side, and we've definitely addressed our infrastructure. The labor pool, we've had a problem just like everybody else with laborers, lifeguards, police. No different than regional and national. We are making some progress, especially I had a meeting with Eddie this morning in HR. We are getting now some, at least more resumes than we did in the past for the labor pool and public works. So hopefully that works out. Insurance premiums, Steve will probably talk to you more about that. But again, just like probably for your own health insurance, your own liability or whatever else, insurance premiums have gone up. That's another big number that there was an increase that we saw when we did this budget. Tailwinds, improved performance in amenities and departments, and certainly a team who I feel has been operating on all cylinders since 2000. Well, I don't want to say since 2009, certainly when I've been here. Okay, so those are headwinds, tailwinds. Let's get into some schedules. Okay, so the first schedule, assessment detail. So that's up there for everybody to see. So on this one, we pretty much break out budget to budget from the prior year, which was recommended by Budget and Finance, I believe, 2 years ago. They asked Steve, they asked us to prepare that. They wanted to see budget to budget. So we've certainly done that and per their instructions. So you can see here, you break out by the general operations, the amenity operations, your reserves, the non-water lots, bulkhead differential, and then the waterfront lots. So if you want to start at the bottom, the recommended budget, which is the second column, and I'll work my way back on this, because I know everybody wants to see this number. The recommended budget at this point in time for the 23-24 budget, $892. That is a decrease of $4 from the 22-23 budget, approved budget that we're in now. And that is basically $104 from the year before that, right? Last year, we had a $100 decrease. So we've been able to sustain that. If you're somebody that wants to see where we're spending the money, and Steve and Linda will show you even more detail, but you know what that cost is, that makes up the 892, you can see that, you know, how much is the reserves, right? So you got the $235 there per homeowner. Your amenities, how much the cost is there for the decrease to your assessment. So if you look at the amenities, and I know what I've heard, and I've been doing this over 15 years, and I've lived here that long, but it always was, you know, we're supporting the amenities, supporting the amenities. The amenities is actually helping us with the assessment. Okay, so on an operational basis, the assessment is decreased, or what we would have to pay based upon our amenities, and we're going to give you more detail on that. But, you know, it's certainly led by, as usually, beach parking. But, you know, golf, we've seen golf turn around. We've seen food and beverage turn around. The marina is always there. So big numbers that definitely help. Like anything else in any other place, the fire EMS, which I believe is a very valuable asset here, and the police, that is a cost, but that's a cost anywhere. So you can see how much it is. We have increased FTEs for the fire and EMS. We have increased salaries, and what we can try to do, whatever possible for benchmarking for the police, as far as cars, individual cars, as well as salaries in the 401k. And that certainly is represented in this budget. Any questions, or anybody want to make any comments or anything on that assessment there? That pretty much at the high level lets you know where we're at. I think it's a good summary budget to budget. Obviously, this year, the forecast for this year is favorability. We just completed December, and Steve, what's the favorability? Because that is something I have to report month to month to the board. But I believe we're favorable to a approved budget in the year we're in, 22-23, of about $1,035,000. Obviously, the next several months, we do have cash outflow. So we'll see how that works out. But that's pretty much in the ballpark where Steve and myself has estimated for this year. So then the question that I've received and I've read, and I get many calls or whatever. So what about that favorability? What are you doing with it? Well, we're doing plenty with it. And I'm going to talk about that right now. So in last year's budget, we allocated for favorability, realized favorability. So that means from a year that we closed out. So the year I'm in now, it's not realized because we haven't closed out the year with an audit. So that favorability is put to the side. That'll be for next year. But from the prior years and since 2019, and we have a schedule, and I'll go through that next, but we've had favorability. And that favorability has been rolled back in to your assessment, our assessment. It's been into our infrastructure. It has rolled back into our amenities. In the last 2 or 3 years, and definitely in the year we just closed out, if you look at racket sports, and even the year I'm in, we use that favorability to fund over $300,000 of investment in the infrastructure there, as well as new infrastructure with the new pickleball courts. We have used that money and we have allocated in the past, last year, for the roads. I was asked by Budget and Finance or instructed to try to get the balance in our roads reserve up to $1 million. In all the years I've been here, we never had that. We basically fund as we go, based upon money we would receive in general from the casino funds. We have allocated, we're up to balance around $750,000. Again, where did that money come from? It came from the favorability. That's where your favorability is going. It's all mapped out. I know everybody's, some people are asking those questions, but that's $750,000 there. We've also allocated in other places. We allocated it to pay for some infrastructure last year, and we'll do it again. It'll also help to take down the assessment. Last year, we allocated out of favorability $650,000. We did the same this year. Do we still have retained earnings or surplus? The answer is yes. And we're anticipating the number that Steve and I just told you about for this year. So we do have a schedule on that. I've presented it in board meetings. It is here. It'll probably be up there next, and I will go through that with you. Any questions on that? That's a big one. Okay, good. All right, we're hard to see. Sorry. What's like with the, oh, perfect time. All right, so obviously that leads into the schedule that's up there right now, which is the schedule that Steve prepares for us, his team. This is a schedule I don't believe we ever had before, but it's the realized surplus allocation and transfers. So if you look up on the top there, you start off on the left, Steve's got the years. He's got the net operating income and losses for each year, the operating deficit. And by the way, we talked about this more the last 2 or 3 years. Going into 2019, 2020, Steve helped me out, we had a deficit of $1.6 million change. Deficit. Now, probably at the projected at the end of this year, forecasted an allocation of all this surplus, Steve is projected here, $1.6 million? What is that considered?
So at the end of this year, about 2.5, and then after this budget potentially goes through 1.6, correct?
Okay, so again, where have all your surplus gone in the past? Oh, it paid off a deficit that we inherited, right? That easy. Big numbers being covered. All laid out for you right here. I sat there 15 years ago in that back, and I tried to figure out stuff when I first came down. These are all the type of schedule I would have liked to have seen down, and I'm not saying anything about the individuals then. It's all laid out for you. It's laid out where we were, deficit 1.6. Steve's telling you right now we're at 2.4. And then next year, after the allocation and what I just talked to you about on where your favorability is going, we're still going to probably be about 1.7. Meanwhile, the infrastructure has been addressed since 2019. Drainage, we've put more money into drainage than I've ever seen. We put more money into the roads. Mailboxes, spent over $125,000 this year, and we plan on spending more next year. In the 15 years here, and if not before, unprecedented. Unprecedented surplus, unprecedented. Record breaking. All right, any questions on that? Or Steve, if you want to add anything, but it's all spelled out there for you, the past year, this year, where the money's going now. You'll hear more about that. Obviously, we're going to fund the new capital out of this surplus for the kayak, and we're excited about that. I know the team is. And then also we'll be doing the, we call it the recreation pier. Questions? A lot there. Yes.
Me to get up?
Yes.
I'm just curious as to whether this is on your website, because I didn't see that I don't think I saw it in the original packet.
The packages, we just put that on there on Monday. It's got the assessment detail page. I don't believe this page is actually.
Yeah, that's an analysis. Normally, we don't put analysis out there, but if you want, we can. I put these in different board presentations.
Huh.
So they're probably in the board presentations, but you
Okay.
can do that. But these are analyses.
Okay, yeah, if I could get that, that would be great.
Yeah, they are. You can have mine after this.
Okay, thanks.
Questions, comments? Okay, good. I love this stuff. Who's up next? Next slide. So the next one I see here is capital.
Let me do the department.
Yeah, you're right. Yes, gonna move. So Linda's going to do some department slides. We're just going to ask Josh to change the
No,
slide.
no, there's no slide for that.
There's no slide for it. Okay, so she's going to talk to you about departmental expenses and stuff. It is on the website, and for all the board members or whoever has this, that's one of the main slides in your binders.
Okay, department analysis is like you said online, and it's all back to the assessment detail. Administration, well, for the operations, which includes administration, manager's office, finance, membership, public relations, CPI, general maintenance and public works, with a net operating of $1,723,548. That starts off with a 676 assessment. Amenities take that assessment down by $147 per household. So that total equals the total of net operating of $1,233,072. Safety, for safety, the net operating is actually, it has a 289 to the assessments. So that's where the total comes up with the assessment total on as
So
noted.
35% of your assessment goes to fire, EMS, police. 35%.
Yes.
Good.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Okay, so Linda's going to continue with the capital.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
What was that number that the amenities level of assessment? 147?
147 per household.
Thank you.
That's on an operational basis.
Operation.
John, I have a question.
Yes.
Is that for me?
Oh, Stuart, yes.
Okay. Listen, I see that we have a projected million plus in our surplus this year. Maybe I just don't understand. Going forward, we're still going to have a surplus based on our assessments. I don't understand why we only have a $3 proposed reduction in our assessment. Can you go over that again for me? I'm just a little slow.
Yeah, no problem, Stuart. And that's fine because this is big. So remember what I said before is that we are in this year probably going to have favorability of about $1 million, $1.1 million. So when you look on that schedule that I put up there, you have that in there, right? So he has that in there, and that's what we're forecasting. But because we haven't realized that, because we have not closed out this year, we do not have audited statements. I have, since day one with the favorability, reported to the board saying we should really not touch that. Let us finalize it. Let us close out the books for the year. Let's realize it, and then we can address it. So that's where that number is there. Now, the other thing is, having retained earnings, but that's the answer to your question. But that would be a decision that obviously the board would have to make. I mean, to me, this is the way that I've been doing it, or we've been doing it, and Budget and Finance agreed. And I'm also looking at down the road, Stuart, 3, 4, 5 years. But again, the main answer to you is that's not realized yet. Everybody got that? Stuart, you good?
When it gets realized, it will be past our budget time, and then we can't reassess whether or not we can have a reduction in our assessment, or I just don't get it.
Okay, so let me help. So if you go back and retrace what we've done over the last 2 or 3 years, obviously that would be something that could possibly be down the road. I would not recommend, I have not recommended that we touch unrealized favorability until it's realized. And I mean, I gotta be honest, I don't know what else to say on that. I've been consistent on that. That's pretty much anybody from the accounting standpoint. If the board wants to do that, I gotta be honest with you, then the board has to instruct. I don't recommend to do that, but if the board instructs, then I will, but I don't recommend that right now.
Well, John, let me ask you a question, okay? So we were in the same position last year, the
Yes.
same meeting, okay?
Yes.
And some money went to assessment reduction, which was, I think, the largest one ever. Okay, but to get to where this year's $1 million would go, it seems to me that over the last year, from that retained earnings, right?
Yes,
You took $350,000 and put it toward roads,
yes,
$60,000 toward T-Docks, which weren't in the budget,
yes,
$75,000 toward the court renovations at the Racket Club,
yes,
$350,000 to, again, toward roads,
yes,
and $150,000 toward mailboxes.
yes, sir.
So if you would have proposed those in the budget, instead of taking them from the retained earnings, it seems to me that we'd be looking at $1 million in the budget, most of which would have been capital or a new capital or capital reserves, which would have probably equated to $122 or $123 increase in the assessment.
Off the top of my head with your number, but that's a correct statement, easily.
Okay.
I see where you're
So
going.
I
Right.
think the answer to the question, which is a fair question, is the retained earnings this year that are realized when the statements are audited in, like, say, like June, right?
Yes,
Will go toward a number of projects, which could include contribution to amenities that need fixed, contribution to drainage, contribution to roads, that if you proposed in the budget would increase the assessment immediately.
that's a correct statement, and that's consistent with what I've brought forward the last 3 years. Yes.
Got it.
Okay. But any other questions? That is big. It ties the whole thing together. I mean, I can go through the detail and we'll go through the detail of expenses, but Budget and Finance has done that. This, to me, at this stage and everything, these are big numbers. This is where we should all be at. So these are good questions. Yeah, Doug.
Yeah, I think,
Oh,
I was just going to clarify for Stuart that you've recommended to us that we not spend that money until
for 3 years I've been recommending.
the surplus is realized. That surplus is not realized until 6 months after the budget for the next year is set.
If not 7.
Those realized earnings, once they're realized, will be able to be used for the following years.
Correct, just like.
That's what we've done.
Yeah.
And that's what we've done the last.
I just seem to remember last year we were favorable, like 1.9 million, and we reduced our assessments by 845,000. I just feel like when we're comparing budget to budget, why not use the best guess on our surplus to reduce that surplus?
Stuart, that's what we did, but we would do it in not the next fiscal year, but the following fiscal year, because those retained earnings have to be realized through our financial audit. That doesn't happen until 6 months after the budget is set. And so it would not be prudent for us to use those funds until we get that financial audit from the accounting firm. So it will be available for us to use to reduce the assessment in a future budget, but not this year's budget, because it won't be realized for another 6 months.
Well, haven't we realized over 3.5 million in the last 3 years that we stocked our reserves as a result of that? And we also reduced $100 last year.
And that's what we have used to reduce the assessment this year.
Okay.
So, look, you know, I've heard all the questions about the favorability. I've gotten them in board meetings. I've gotten them outside. I've gotten the calls. I got to be honest with you, I laid it all out. Now,
Okay.
$6 million for this year. I'm just going to summarize it again, but I'm going to say that is potential probably in July to be realized after we close the books and everything. I still have what? January, February, March, April. I still got 4 months. I don't know what else to say. At some point it will be, but Stuart, Doug, Colette, Frank, I got to be honest with you. That's a board call right now. If you want to lower the assessment and use that number, I don't know what else to say. I've addressed it. Then task us to do it. I've recommended not to do it for 3 years. You have been there with me. I've showed you, I've laid it out. I've showed you where we're going to use it down the road. If you want to put that in there now and lower the assessment, that's up to the board. There's nothing else I can do. I've done my part. I've answered that question 3 times. I understand this is a little whatever, and I get it, and I will continue. But at this point, all I'm hearing here is that you see this favorability unrealized and you want to take it. If you want to take it, then take it and tell me, and Steve and I will go back and crunch the numbers. I recommend not, but I'm not going to lose sleep if you do it.
All right, fair
I don't know
enough.
what to say.
All right, John, I'd be opposed to doing it, but let me give you this scenario, okay? Until that money is booked in ours, correct?
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Okay, let me give you this wild scenario that exists due to some things that happened this past year with the state of Maryland. Supposing somebody wipes out the Northgate Bridge.
Correct,
And we have to replace it
correct,
at $1 million.
correct.
Okay? Under the new Maryland state law, we need to have reserves equal to what the DMA study says they should be, correct?
Correct.
So what would happen to that $1 million? It would become an immediate hit on the assessment next year, correct?
Yes.
That's why we shouldn't be spending money until it's in our checking account.
Okay.
Frank, if someone
But
took out the
whatever the board
Northgate
tells you to
Bridge,
do.
would insurance take care of that? How would it hit our assessment? I just, we're going to agree to disagree here. I'll listen to the rest. Thank you.
Yeah, Stuart, hopefully I answered it. I understand what you're saying, but at this point, it would be a board decision, and then I'll march.
So I'm probably going to shoot myself in the foot for saying this, but, you know, is there any tolerance for some level? In other words, if we, and I'll throw a number out there, we go back to the original $21 assessment, are we running any risk? I guess the question would be, in other words, you know how risk averse I am. So the idea would be, you know, if we were considering that, because we've heard a lot from the membership that, well, you know, and to be fair, some people aren't equating, you know, this retained earnings issue and booking it to actually realizing the numbers. They're just going to go, you got this and I'm paying this. And so we have to be able to address that part of our memberships. And the question would be, is there any tolerance and would, you know, for some, you know, reduction, whether it be just symbolic, nothing else, and if so, are we running any risk? And if we're running any risk, and the answer is we don't do it. But if there is a possibility of, you know, appeasing some of the membership and answering their concerns, I think we should at least consider it and either A, do it or B, explain why we can't do it or why we shouldn't do it. So.
Honestly, I thought I did all that, but yes. So look, I mean, the numbers are there. You know, we also talked about where we wanted to be and how much, whatever. We could continue to fund our reserves. If you want to take another, how much is 600,000 divided by whatever the number is, 8,456 is the number? Can you just calculate that for me? $70? I mean, if you want to really run it down and almost get to where you were, and I'm not sure then for next year, you could take the assessment down, but I've brought that up with BNF, $50 or whatever. I mean, if you want to take that approach, you can do that.
No, I just wanted to discuss it. Let me go on record as saying I'm very comfortable where we are right now. I
Right.
don't see any need to change the assessment. I
Right.
just think it's prudent for us to discuss
Right, I
why we
totally
wouldn't,
agree.
why we
Yeah.
wouldn't, okay?
I
And
got
at the
it.
same time, and I'll say this, and I hope I don't, you know, get anybody upset at me, but, you know, people will, you know, I guess most people, at least I've run into, are satisfied that the, you know, that the assessment is about where it was last time. They're very comfortable with that. We reduce it, you know, and they get more comfortable. But remember, at some point, we're going to have to bring it back up. And that's when people will be upset, if nothing else, because, we've had these several years of, sort of ability to, we had good weather. We were able to manage the environment in such a way, gain some efficiencies in the operation in order to reduce costs and realize this, this benefit or this surplus. Will those conditions continue going forward? Yeah. Your guess is as good as mine, but I also think we need to at least think the fact that if maybe we don't have something as favorable as we've had in the past couple of years and, not necessarily reduce the assessment because we're doing it, but, safeguard, for those potential conditions that could put us, again, in the red. But, again, I just want to go on record. I'm fine with where we are right now. I just thought, again, it would be prudent for us to, at least because this is a town hall meeting for the membership.
Yeah.
So I think they need to hear this kind of discussion.
Yeah, and first of all, Doug, I totally agree with you. And anybody that knows me or works around with me, I love this. And this is what I believe should be part of the budget process. And these should be the questions. And we should, which we have, our team up here, giving you all the analysis and laid it out. So here's a couple of things. First, remember, I'm going through a process, right? I went through budget and finance. I got the recommendations, I got the guidance from them. And that's what I did, I being the entire team. They instructed me, they told me with everybody listening that today, our funded reserves is 22 to 28%. And we're closer to the 28%. Now, that was something that was agreed upon years ago. I happened to be on budget and finance at the time. We recommended that, the board approved it. This time, budget and finance came forth and told me that they want to see the reserves going to 30 to 35%. Now I'm taking that guidance, but that's a lot of money. It's millions. So if you give me that guidance, that's what I'm working towards, and that's what I'm doing. If you want to take that guidance back and say, hey, John or team, we want our reserves to be at 22%, and I'm not recommending that. Well, then, yeah, this money over the next several years will, if you want me to sit here and forecast the next 3 years, sure. But if you want us to fund that, and you're telling me that, well, that's what I'm doing. And I hope you all understand that, because that's big. Hold on, Steve, let me just finish so we can. That's big, and we've done that, and we have the analysis for that. And we did that on our presentations.
So John,
The other thing is this. When I started this process, we started this process, no one came to me and said, we want the assessment. We want every dollar to lower it. Nobody told me that. I can do that. Just tell me to do that. But I'm being told, I being us, I'm being told, we want our reserves higher. We want this. We want more we want to improve our infrastructure. I'm doing that. And I'm covering, I'm covering the headwinds I told you about. They're big. And they could be bigger. If you want me to take something that's unrealized, okay, instruct me to do it. Like I said, I'll march. I did not get that guidance or instruction from the beginning. If I get it today, and this board in their wisdom wants to go that way, I'll do that. But you didn't realize it. You didn't realize it. We had emergency this year. This is what Doug's talking about, I believe, Frank. We had emergency down at the marina. Well, I didn't even talk about that. That was $500,000. Yeah, that's $500,000. We had something else that'll come to me that we had to pay for. If you want to leave the cupboard bare or really drain this place, sure. You just have to tell me. I don't know what else to say. I did not budget that way. The $100 decrease last year was record breaking. You want 150? We'll do 150. But then we have to note this could happen next time. Or as Doug's pointing out, well, then there might be a $100 increase next time. Do you want that, or you want it more consistent? You just have to tell me. Trust me, I can do it.
but John,
A lot of questions. Well, hold on, you're right.
So I think,
Ladies, go ahead.
okay. I'm just going to reiterate what you've said in plain English. We have, in addition, I will point out that we have at least 50 years of experience
Right.
in financial auditing in this room that contributed maybe way more than 50 years. You are the experts that help us understand how to manage our funds.
Right.
Our reserves are funded and now we're funding them more appropriately to prepare for needs, financial expenditures that we foresee coming down the pike. There are obligations that are just coming up year after year. The unrealized earnings are there as a cushion, as Doug pointed out. If there is an emergency during the year that was unforeseen, it's a big number. Those unrealized funds are there as a cushion, but we're not going to allocate them to a specific spend until they've been realized based on the advice of our auditors and the wisdom in this room, the three financial.
Totally agree with you.
in this room.
Yes.
And so I, as an individual director, would not be in favor of touching those unrealized funds. They will be available for us to touch and use for future new capital spend, raising our reserves to make sure that they're appropriate for the expected expenditures coming down the pike.
Yeah.
But I'm completely opposed to
Okay.
refusing to take the advice of our financial experts that got us from a $1.6 million deficit to a $1.6 million surplus
Thank you.
in, 4 years?
Yeah, thank you. And just another point, and just want, and I know Steve, and then I got them, and I got to see behind me, and somebody, tell me if there's somebody raising their hand. Look, we've talked about this too. We are dependent upon weather. And we saw this last, I don't know if it happened in September or at the end of September, Steve, but we had a bad weekend, and I think they called it a hurricane or whatever they called it down here. But we lost $60,000 to $80,000 of revenue just at the yacht club. We're kind of lucky at golf. It did stop raining, and we actually wound up getting golfers. We were able to stay open because of everything we've done here in drainage and all that. So we didn't take as much of a beat here, but it's fragile. I can go through 3 or 4 weekends, and all of a sudden, I could be talking to you next year of a $500,000 loss because we lose at the marina, we lose at the golf course. So that's all in there also. Look, it all depends on how you all want to prepare. Believe me, we are utilizing basically all the favorability, one way or the other. And like I said, unprecedented increases in the reserves. Now, if you want to change the approach and say every dollar, all right, we'll do that, Steve. But I'm glad you're not doing that, but thank you.
I sort of agree with what almost everyone has said here. Seems to me there's some basic points. One is, we're talking about the anticipated favorability, which is money we don't have yet. So we're spending money we don't have, if that's one way to look at it. The other thing, and I don't have the same level of expertise that so many others in this room have, but I'm glad you brought it back. I go back to the first slide, which was about the headwinds.
Right.
We, as a nation, for a period of several years, experienced very little inflation.
Yeah.
We had the pandemic, the supply chain issues that drove up, a lot of dollars chasing very few goods and services. That's what inflation is. It seems to be under control, but we don't know.
Right.
At the same time, the minimum wage has gone up. We had problems with our labor force last summer with the pools. We discussed all of that.
Right.
But it's, to me, it would be unwise to spend money we don't have when we know we have these continued headwinds facing us. We may have a whole different picture come this time next year.
Totally agree.
But we can't count on that. It could be better, it could be worse.
Right.
Weather could be terrible. We could have 8 major snowfalls.
That's another thing, correct.
Right. We're now in early February. We have had no snow for this winter.
Right.
So, to me, it would be incredibly unwise to spend money we don't have, and that's what's being discussed.
Thank you, Steve. And I see Eddie over there, Kathleen, and Steve will tell you, when natural gas, when gas was going up back in May, June, whatever, right after we finished the budget and started last year. I mean, there was some big time meetings in my office because we thought the budget for aquatics, that we're going to need another 50, 60,000, as well as gas and all that. Now, thankfully, it seems to have come down. But, at that point, I was sitting there thinking, you're right. I know, Frank, you had a question.
Well, a couple of things, okay? So, I mean, I moved in this community in 2013. And I've seen people sit up here in board positions that talk about a $5 reduction in the assessment like it was the Holy Grail. And at the same time, they're bragging about their damn $5 assessment reduction. We walk into a building like this, you couldn't breathe because of the mold. You couldn't go to our food and beverage operation and get a hamburger that you would give to your dog. Okay, you could go to no facility here where you could honestly look at somebody and say it was in good operating order. Okay, that's all changed and those days are behind us. To those that are critical of the budget, in 2018, the assessment was $921. Today, it's $892 proposed. Okay, there's a real simple explanation if you don't understand it. Take your dead ass up the food line. Okay, and look, last year, we faced the largest inflation that we did in a generation. We had a $16 million budget. If you take the rate of inflation and you look at risk per line item, that budget legitimately could have gone up by $1.3 million or $153 per homeowner. That's what good management brings to you, this kind of discussion. That $153 is not being passed on to the homeowners because of good management across the board. Couple things that lead to that, and that leads, if there was a criticism, and I really don't have one, the question that I would have in looking at things is, in going down the line items, and I'll bring up a specific to you, John, aquatics, okay? I think aquatics is very well managed, right? Given the labor pool issues that we're well aware of, the wage increases from the state, the cost of chemical increase, right? Okay, pools, most people don't realize that the pools have a fixed capacity.
Right.
Okay, not only do they have a fixed capacity it's people per day, but days of operations. Okay, so the question that I would have is, given that, and given that our governing documents say that amenities should be break even or better, okay, what can we do on the revenue side? Because quite frankly, I don't see very much on the cost side that we can do. And I'll use this analogy again for people that kind of lose facts, okay? When you go back to 2018, and I think it would be an appropriate benchmark, but I could be wrong and Steve can correct me. Losses at this golf operation were staggering. I think they approached $400,000 a year, okay? We sat down. One of the first things I did on the board is sit down and try to find out what's causing the loss and what can you do to reverse it. And people said, well, number one, you're taking maintenance from the course, so it's not worth a crap to play on. And number two, just walk around the clubhouse and who would want to be in here? So the golf people said, take our hands from behind our back, okay, and give us a good facility and we can give you profit. We've done that. They've delivered. Okay, pure and simple. Okay, the question is, what can we do? A similar thing with aquatics, because it looks like the only situation there to bring it up to where our governing documents say break even or better is revenue increases. And if I have a reluctance to this budget, it's to pass something where an amenity goes backwards, because the fact of the matter is, and I'll use again the golf analogy. There's a balance that has to be struck, folks. There are 8,500, I guess now 60 or 70 homeowners, lot owners in Ocean Pines. 1,700 plus or minus use the golf course. 6,500 don't. The 1,700 that use it need a good facility that gives a good experience, that's worth the money. The 6,500 that don't use it don't want to subsidize my round of golf. I think we're in the same situation with aquatics. I think that might be time to increase the rates to balance it and bring it to zero, which is, if you're going to be focused on $3, there's a $5 decrease in your assessment.
Okay. Yes. Yeah, did I have to give the name or Doug?
No, no, no.
Oh, you don't have to give me name. Whatever.
This
you
isn't a
want.
board meeting.
It's not a board meeting.
My name's Rebecca Ferguson. I live at 7 Carriage Lane. I spoke at the board meeting, the last board meeting. And I'm here today to just support what the board is doing. And I'm also here to offer you some additional thoughts that you might want to think about. I have a master's in public health and nursing. I have a teaching certificate. I have a doctorate in evidence-based practice. So I like to look at statistics and I like to figure out and how to make reasoning judgments with data. And my father would be the first to say, you're horrible at math. So I do not stand here by any means to say that I understand how budgets work or maybe read these ledgers. Even if this was posted on Monday, I would have never had an opportunity or a chance to go through it. So I want to begin by thanking the board and the GM for diligent budget work, and to the Budget and Finance Advisory Committee for their volunteer review of the proposed revisions. As a homeowner, I am very appreciative of how complex this is, and I'm very thankful for your efforts. As a disclaimer, I am a member of the Strategic Planning Committee of Ocean Pines, and I am a Racquet Center member. And I have a history of playing all 3 sports. And my husband and I actually were drawn to Ocean Pines because of the Racquet Center. My husband played tennis here when he was in his 40s. And there was a very vibrant Racquet Center here 20 years ago. We decided to retire in Ocean Pines because of that sports complex. And we've enjoyed meeting many friends, and we're thrilled to be able to call that Racquet Center our community. It's a challenge to ensure fiscal stability in turbulent economic times, characterized by a pandemic, disrupted supply chain, worker shortages, and inflationary environments. But balancing a budget is one important way to enhance a community's wealth. Indeed, Ocean Pines needs to maintain and internally enhance its amenities to preserve mark-to-market value. Importantly, the pattern of decreasing amenity membership and increasing usage fees can be addressed by the use of community improvement models and frameworks. These models can be applied to health improvement, but they also can be applied to the community level change and improvement. We talked about favorability here, and I'm going to get to that in a little bit in terms of 3, 5, and 10-year benchmarks, which is part of a community where you can prioritize and determine projects where you want to identify and go. As reported by Tom Stoss in his February 2023 Ocean Progress and OP Progress article, page 31 and 30, he quotes, rec and park facilities are at peak capacity. There are no plans for adding new facilities at the community center or elsewhere at this time. The implications of the statement by reasoning could be that existing footprints will need to be maintained and internally enhanced to preserve mark-to-market value. As an example of a community-based approach and action planning, the Racquet Center needs a director who can address the social, athletic, and financial needs of the complex and its existing users. A proposed manager's salary of $445,000 may need to be further reevaluated by benchmarking other facilities see what is being done in the industry. Job roles and responsibilities based on evidence can be the start of that review. As the Racket Center is maintained internally and enhanced, whereby an increase in instruction and tournaments is realized, Ocean Pines will generate an additional revenue quoted at least 20%. There is potential for growth at the Racket Center if it's exceptionally managed. More revenue from our collective amenities means more assessment reduction. We've talked about that today. Engaging community members who are directly involved in community enhancement is important. Racket maintenance budget to the golf maintenance budget as a line item can be utilized to replace the existing backboard shared by all sports. A maintenance budget serves to identify and track maintenance needs, and these needs can be inclusive of the enhanced requests forthcoming as the Pro Shop building in renovation or replacement will be reintroduced in your 24-25 budget. An ADA compliant facility with adequate shower, bath facilities, storage, and safe parking may require more than a building renovation and be a reflection of the quality similar to the building that I'm standing in. Amenity enhancement requests and their discussion is of importance. As highlighted by Stoss in his OP progress February 2023, page 33, there appears to be a pattern of decreasing amenity membership, plus or minus 400, but revenue is ahead of budget. At the community improvement level, the implications suggest the following. Daily user fees may be preferred over annual membership for some amenities. Analysis of the beach parking and the use of the beach club is an example of how complex fees and pass costs can be for consumers. Prudent oversight by the Financial Advisory Committee and the GM draft adjustment of those fees seem to be balanced for the association and the consumers for this year. Consider this consumer story. I do not use the beach club, but I would buy a parking pass if I could purchase the old coupon book so that I could budget this amenity in my monthly. My grandkids only come to me 3 or 4 times a year. Note, beach parking did not reach its revenue target this year, but it was really close. Moreover, per sport membership trends and revenues generated at the Racket Center indicate that although tennis gained 2 memberships, its revenue was under budget by $20,000. Platform tennis dropped membership, but they were ahead of budget. Its daily use is daily usage making up the difference, and is the usage from OP consumers or from those people that are outside of our community. Likewise, pickleball memberships have dropped 65 units year over year, but revenue was up 41K this year, and OP invested in those courts. So we've recognized that there's a use factor at the Racket Center because we've invested in there, but we're still having some difficulty realizing the potential revenue generator of that sport. I would like to see if pickleball revenue was above or below the 2021 revenue generating point. Because I believe that there was my hunch, my thesis is that there was a decline this year. And I think that needs to be looked at. As reported by The Kitchen, which is a pickleball website, an estimated 40 million predicted players in this sport is realized by 2030 with an average growth rate of 11%. Tennis's annual growth rate is 4.2%. I play tennis. I play tennis here in Baltimore and I've played at Ocean Pines. So I am speaking on behalf of both sports, not contradicting each sport. At the end of the 2021 paddle market value was $152.8 million. And by 2028, that value is predicted to grow to $256 million. 45% of pickle players have an annual income of $100,000. Ocean Pines doesn't sell pickleball equipment in our pro shop. We don't have a pro shop. And I can't tell you what I've done to go get tennis shoes for pickleball because I'm using every warehouse I can find to have them shipped to me. Importantly, why is this amenity membership decreasing when we're looking at overall increases in the sport? Are dues increases across all amenities oversetting our membership losses? And therefore, we don't really have the true picture. Are our residents balancing their own budgets and making choices about where they're going? I would have to say, yes, I will drop tennis next year. And I will play on a per play basis so I can afford the new fee that's coming out for the yard. Is market to market value being maintained and are we attracting outside players? I can tell you over this past year, we've lost outside players at the pickleball court just by sight. And we lose our players that are members that are residents here and go to Florida. So we're losing winter membership and we're also allowing our winter members to go play at Sea Colony indoors. Varying levels of maintenance of amenity facilities, poorly run tournaments, poor visual presentation, overcrowding, poor parking. That's what we're looking at the Racket Center. And they're all community-based consumer variables that may influence attendance there. If total membership declines, what are the revenue implications for OP? I think we've made that clear here. Our amenity revenues reduce our assessment fees. How are we going to make that loss up? Especially considering this tailwind environment that we all identify here. Contrary to, and as reported by Mr. Staus in the January 23 OP progress page 32, I speak on behalf of the Strategic Planning Committee and its chairperson. We did not at any time instruct Ocean Pines Homeowners Association or GM to increase amenity revenues. None of our committee members and committee minutes reflect that statement. As a committee, our discussions have concluded based on benchmarking and other communities that in the last 18 months, Ocean Pines has maintained a fair market value. Furthermore, the strategic committee exists to align and update OP vision, mission, and community goals by informing the board of the analysis survey results and benchmarking results that we discovered, and we've done so. This committee does not inform any other committee on strategies, actions, or implementations related to those goals. If asked, we can offer. Based on evidence, the committee points OP toward becoming the premier Delmarva residential community it wants to be. It's up to the board to develop the strategy, plans, and actions to achieve those goals. In order to achieve that realization, OP needs to continue its path of financial stability. I don't spend the money I don't have in my checking account. So the former discussion about favorability of reserves and not spending them until you have them is well appreciated. Balancing the budget with a community-based approach and analysis will help us achieve that mission. And importantly, raising fees alone will not maintain market-to-market value. We have to do more to reach the consumer in our area. Thank you for the time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is some of the stuff.
No, go ahead.
So just, first of all, thank you very much. Very well put. So just a couple of things. The hitting wall, I've been down there several times. I spoke to people there. They told me it was okay. I recommend, so I've been down to the Racket Center several times to address the hitting wall. I was told that there was a dead spot in it. I spoke to several people from pickleball. Can't remember the gentleman's first name, but Kramer, he said it was okay. He said it was a dead spot. If that racket committee then put it down and bring it forward from the board, I'll change it out. Somebody told me it may not be the proper boards for pickleball ball. That was more for tennis in the past. I don't know if that's true. If you all tell me what you want there and you're all telling me from the committee to the liaison to the board, we'll address it. I mean, I did go down there several times though, but yes.
As liaison to the Racket Sport Committee, I've taken notes on
Good.
points
There's a lot of stuff that we gotta,
that were discussed today, and I will take these back to the committee.
but yeah, no, good. And just a couple of things, and you may not notice, and I'm sorry, I know it's Mrs. Ferguson, the first name, if I'm allowed. Becky. So that building down there, just like this building and everybody that's been here with me for years, I do want to address that building. I believe a constructive board, a committee and everything. We can hopefully get that done. I do have somebody who helped me with this building. And Eddie happens to be here. We are looking at that building. We are looking what we need from the county, what we can and cannot do. I have somebody who drew plans for this so that we would save money on this, and he's doing it for other projects. I have him working on that. I have him meeting with the committee, Frank Brown, right? So I do want to see that. I do want the board or the committees to come forward on that. I would hope in 2 years, obviously this first year and then the second year, but that would have to come through the committees and the board and whatever. But we are looking at that. We are trying to get, in fact, I met with Susan Morris just the other day on something else, and she mentioned, and I said to her, if we can just get that committee to tell us exactly what they want, then we can start working on it. But each time I've gone down there, I gotta be honest with you, I've walked out of there and I have no idea what you want.
Yeah, and
Hold on.
talking about the Racket Center, the Racket Committee.
Oh, no, the Racket Center. Did I say rock? No, no rock.
Sorry.
Yeah, the Racket Center Committee has discussed a lot of these things
I know you,
with John. And just as it took, I think, 3 years to address the problems here at the golf course, the plans for improving the Racket Center is a multi-year project.
right. But we are working, we are addressing.
But it is being addressed.
Yeah.
I think many of the things that you brought up are under discussion by the Racket Advisory Committee and with John. And so, as I said, I will take these back to the committee and we will make sure that
I
we're,
appreciate that, but
and you are invited to come to those meetings.
appreciate that. The one thing that I find is really interesting here is I had to come as a Racket Center member to the town hall at the budget meeting with concerns that I have. And you're already hearing about it, but I don't know. So there is a communication issue, lag or issue
Right.
that I think overall needs to be addressed. And
Well, the minutes to
So I was gonna say, right.
committee meetings are on the website. That would be your source of information
I
as an
appreciate,
interested
And-
party.
I appreciate that.
And nothing I just said, I haven't said several times in board meetings and committees and whatever.
It's just so interesting because that's not what I hear.
I understand, trust me, I understand.
I understand, I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, I know.
But your best source of information is not word of mouth. It is the documents that are officially on our website.
And I do appreciate that.
So may I say something?
Sure.
So 15 years ago, when I first came down here, I sat in the back of board meetings, talked to people down at golf. I couldn't figure what was going on. I got the opportunity to go on to food and beverage, to budget and finance. I went to other committee meetings. I read these papers in the base, well, I don't want to miss anybody, Bayside, Progress, every paper down here. forum. I went back years trying to figure out stuff. They had back then a legacy reserve, a 5-year plan, and they were in the 7th year. And I just couldn't figure it out. I have subsequently, over the 15 years and everything, figured it all out, but I felt the same way when I first came down. I think Dr. Horn is giving you some good advice to, just read the documents that are out there. I mean, believe me, I'm accessible if you want to come, within reason. I'll go through some stuff with you, budget or whatever. You obviously work hard at this stuff, and I'll try to answer your questions.
And the next Racket Sports Advisory Committee is February 9th, 4 PM in this room. You are invited. Yes.
The other thing, and I know, what you said about the increases, I don't think the increases across the board. I think everybody, but the Budget and Finance recommended to us to look at increases, within reason, to balance off with inflation or whatever. You said some interesting stuff on the membership and the numbers. Steve's already looking at some of the stuff. We'll look at that. We'll sit down with the director and we'll see that. And we'll look at that. But again, that would be the committee, Colette, obviously, with that. But I'll do whatever for my team on that. There was something else you said here. Now I can't remember that I wanted to address. I'll think about it. But I want to try to address everything, whether today or after this. Any comments that you have?
John, one other point.
Sure.
Becky, you may have not heard this because around here, people tell you what they want you to hear. Okay. Overriding and having gone through this with this golf course. Okay. And turning it from a place that, you'd want goats to graze to a good course. Okay. Racket Center faces one issue that I think is unique to the Racket Center compared to all other Ocean Pines amenity. And I'm not sure you've heard this. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers has told us not 1 square inch of horizontal expansion. So if you want more pickleball, you're going to have to give up tennis platform.
I appreciate your comment, and I know that as you discerned as to what to do about those new courts, I know that there was some discussion about tennis courts versus pickleball courts, et cetera. And I'm not here to take sides on either sport. This is what I can offer you from the data standpoint.
Oh, perfect.
I look at those statistics about where we're going and what children are involved in today and how that pickleball is becoming a curriculum in schools. I just think that you can't close your eyes to where revenue is going. You have the potential to make more revenue at the Racket Center. Now, the Army Corps of Engineers issue is an issue that I understand. I don't, quite frankly, and people at the pickleball courts will probably be really upset for saying this, but I don't understand why those courts were built there. I would have taken, personally, I would have taken the last 2 tennis courts that were at the base of the tennis courts.
Okay.
I would have turned them into pickleball courts. I'd have put stands down there. I would have put a roof down there by what is exemplified by Pictona in Florida, where you
Roof over the whole.
you just have a metal roof.
I'm gonna take this off.
So
I'm saying, I'd love to talk to you about this stuff, but
okay,
But yeah, I would say just off.
Okay.
Better served.
let's back up a little bit.
talking about a roof for like the
Let's
people.
back up a little bit. So, because obviously that's bringing up some uncomfortable situations or discussion. The footprint of the Racket Club allows itself to support pickleball, tennis, and paddle.
Yes,
It depends on how you want to use the square footage.
correct.
Actually, it doesn't matter what I think. It's a matter of what the membership
Yeah, let me provide a little
wants
bit
to go.
sort of framework to this. So this is the kind of discussion that should be had at the committee level because they have their feet on the ground. They're there. So this is probably, while we hear you, I think at this point, my recommendation would be take these same things and anything else that you had written down as notes and take that back to the committee.
I can do that.
Colette's invitation to come to that meeting and basically, hey, based on what I mentioned at the budget meeting here for the membership, that,
Right.
you know, start to, because we really can't do anything other than listen to you right now, but action can happen, you know, if you're at the committee level. So that would be my recommendation to move to that.
I appreciate that.
Okay.
I appreciate that.
But we've heard you. We definitely heard you.
Okay.
Alrighty. Any other questions? Okay, so on the surplus, I think we're good. Yeah, Doug?
No, I don't know.
Oh, you want to talk more?
Yeah, you know, only because, and, you know, again, I did say something, at the last, meeting about the, memberships in aquatics. Frank brought up an interesting, and it prompted me again, where Frank, you know, it looks like the cost side on aquatics is, you know, it's about as efficient as it's going to get. I mean, you know, there's little improvements. It's running at a high efficiency. So where do you look for any kind of, you know, it would be on the revenue side. And the question would be, you know, with the current fees the way they are, and I know that we can't do it, but, you know, should we maybe look into it further? Does it warrant any additional investigation to look at the different, you know, layers of membership? I know that we talked about it. I said, you know, it's really not practical. And by the way, somebody mentioned coupon cards. I can attest to the fact that that's really not where you want to go. Okay, just because of, you know, it took us 3 years to clean that up. But I don't know. I guess, you know, maybe the membership, because we've heard it from a number of people, boy, I'd love to be able to take my grandkids to the thing. And I know we can't do it yet, but I, you know, just wondering if, does it die on the vine right there? Or is it something that warrants, you know, some further investigation, maybe not necessarily for this fiscal year, but for a subsequent fiscal year? And I'll just leave it at that.
Sure. No, that's something we can definitely do. You know, we pretty much balanced aquatics. Somebody has questions?
Stuart.
Stuart,
Oh.
I
Yeah.
can't see. Stuart, you got a question?
Yeah, I kind of do. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. The aquatics committee, I don't know if this went over because I blipped out there for a while and I was able to get back in, but the aquatics committee came up with an idea of having a couples membership to be added on as a separate and distinct category. And I think that's not a bad idea because all we have is family and single. I think we'd sell more memberships that way.
Okay.
Has that been addressed? I'm sorry.
Okay, so couples membership. Okay, a bunch of hands going up here. I think she was up first, Glenn.
Amy Pack 109 White Horse. I'd like to speak regarding Frank Daly's question about what we can do to raise aquatics revenue. First of all, what we shouldn't do is erode aquatics revenue. So I'm asking that the board please listen to your operations team and make no changes to the membership structure that would erode revenue. The directors that are asking the team why, you know, grandchild memberships or couples memberships will not work, just ask the operations team and you'll get the answer and be able to address those questions with homeowners. One idea that I've had throughout the years about increasing aquatics membership, now that we require a membership card to enter this meeting, I think more members are getting the membership card, which is a good thing. Working front desk at the pool, I think it might be an idea worthwhile considering that to get the resident rate for aquatics, you must show a card. If you want your visiting children to get that resident rate, give them your card. If you trust them with your card, if they lose the card, you're going to pay the replacement value. But if you do not have that card, you do not get the resident rate. And what I have seen through the years is we have short-term renters come in and we'll have 16 people come and they'll give the same address. They're all staying at a house, a 5-bedroom house or whatever. And I feel as a homeowner, I am subsidizing those members getting that resident rate. I know our North Star tracks resident versus non-resident rate, and the non-resident rate is not significant at all. In some pools, it's only 4%, but the resident rate is including anyone who gives an address. So if I think we would cut down on maybe some revenue losses if we required that membership card.
Okay, thank you, Emmy.
Doug, I would just, or John, I would just say that I agree that we don't want to make any changes that are going to, in the revenue, in the membership structure or membership-based revenues that are going to erode the overall revenue.
Yeah.
The pool costs what it costs to run, and we need to get revenue that will cover that in a way that's fair and equitable, but captures what we need.
Okay. Anybody else? Anybody behind me? Okay.
Well, the idea of any, reasonable business person would not want to take action that would erode revenue. So I think one of the things that the challenge would be, and that's why I said in my other comment, the idea would be, are there any things we should look at to change, or at least add maybe, a couple of categories that could potentially increase revenue. And I think that's where the analysis should go to.
Yes, and I agree with that. And I agree that we should be looking at the competitive communities that we're dealing with, our mark-to-market value, to see what are they doing? What are they doing? Are they offering a more of a creative route so that you have some sort of legs to make your decision on?
Yep. Somebody behind me have a question? Stuart?
No, I'm good. I
Oh,
still
who?
think that we should look into adding a couple's membership. It would increase revenue by increasing sales of memberships. It would not erode, in my opinion. And that was also the opinion of the Aquatics Committee.
Okay, and I did write that down. Okay, but showing the card, I mean, I have some, Kathleen, anything you want to add or?
Want me to come up and speak to
Yeah, come on up. So I have, I value
It's
everything.
good afternoon at this point.
I'm Kathleen Cook and I've worked for Aquatics for 10 and a half years. In reference to showing the card, that's always been a courtesy that has been afforded to you guys as homeowners. If your child comes and your grandchildren, they say, I'm staying with my father at 123, Birch Lane, we've always afforded that courtesy. Totally in support if we want to go to a card, but it would have to be a policy change because the residents, whenever we change policies, for good or for bad, there is always a tremendous amount of pushback. So I would ask for my team, the courtesy of my team, if we're going to do that and we're no longer going to afford it to renters, or we're not going to afford it to grandchildren or children that are visiting, or it's not even a relation. I'm staying with my best friend, Mr. Parks. We went to college together. He would be afforded that courtesy because of the fact that he's staying with you as a homeowner. So if in fact we want to change that policy, don't really have an opinion on it one way or the other, I would just ask for board support, that it would come with a policy change and that would be dictated in order to protect my team. If we don't want to afford it to renters, again, I would just like for that to be a stated policy because there's a lot of homeowners that rent their home and they use that as a benefit that you'll be able to use the pools. So I see a bunch, I'm not weighing in one way or the other. I certainly would support whatever decision is made. I'm just asking that if we do it by a policy change so that my team has something to stand on. Also, as far as changing the membership rates, I was under the impression that we got marching orders for us to look at that in a future budget because we're so deep. Your couples versus your families, so to speak, is a 50-50. So in order to do that, I do think it's going to be somewhat taxing on the membership department, that we would really need to formulate a plan. But it would not be my recommendation to take the couples membership and reduce it. It would be for us to, do what we're doing with the family membership as the couple and then to move forward past then. But it was my understanding that our team, to include leadership, was giving marching orders to look at that next year.
And they approved it, by the way.
Any other questions?
What about the benchmarking? Do we do benchmark?
It's very, very difficult for us to benchmark because you guys have to understand that by state law, we are categorized as a recreational facility. So when you go to Sea Colony, for example, they do allow guests throughout the winter, but it's my understanding when it comes to the summer that at that point, then it becomes residents only. So it's very, very difficult to benchmark because we are a very unique entity to be a homeowners association categorized as recreational, which means we accept funds from the general public. We're not private. So as best I can, yes. And
Part of our updates.
right, well, I mean, we talk about it, we look into it, but in apples to apples, it would be a very difficult thing for you. But when we do, in fact, look at memberships in general, we find ours to be extremely affordable.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
But just a general question to you, John, and your team, like not for this budget, but for the next budget. Sure. It seems all of this, I mean, look, I mean, I have 4 kids and 6 grandkids and various combinations come to the pool. It seems to me that if you want to do a couples membership, and I'm the liaison for the aquatics committee, you want to do a family membership, you want to do a grandparents and grandchild membership, that the driver to that is each class of membership has an identification card with their picture on it. Is that doable under our current systems?
Ruth Ann?
Yes.
Okay.
I have Ruth Ann here.
So the question is, if we want to go to that, and again, I'm open to doing it certainly because, you know, I think it's not, it's a suggestion worth researching. Then how much of an effort from a management team standpoint does it require? And from a policy standpoint, because essentially what we're going to say is this: if you want to get the homeowner rate, then you need a homeowner card. If you want to get a couples rate, you need whatever card that would be. If you want to get an extended family rate, whatever that would be. If you want to get, and just as a pet peeve of mine, I do not think that homeowners and renters should pay the same rate. I know there's a big discussion on that. But you'd need a card per category. And I'm just concerned, number one, can we handle it? And if we handle it, how we'd handle it. I think it's something to look at.
Okay.
I have a question.
Although Ruth Ann, I think, want to say something. Ruth Ann's our membership lead, just for anybody they don't know.
It is doable, but we offer that to people now anyway. If you're a resident and your children are coming down for the summer and they want to get their own membership, they purchase that, just not at the resident rate because they don't own your home. They are afforded an associate rate. And now we have distinguished between homeowners and an associate rate. So they get their own card that says associate on it. So we are trying to separate that. But it's also in the swipe that's behind it. At the swipe, when they swipe that card, it's going to show what you are or who you are, your category, and also what type of membership you have.
So we could support different tiers of membership at different rates with the existing system.
Yes, we could. It's just a matter of adding all that to the system and an application and however you want it to work.
And that's it, a policy and the workload to do that. Because then what you're basically saying is when you show up at a pool, okay, kind of simplistic thing. If you don't have a card and our pools are open to the public, then our rate for somebody without a card should be what the local pools are that are open to the public charge.
A non-resident rate.
Right. Period. And I don't know what those rates would be, but it's doable. I think it's the administrative infrastructure that we'd have to work out to do that.
Yes.
So Frank, the question that I have for the aquatics committee is what evidence do they have that creating, for example, couples membership or these other tiers of membership will actually enhance revenue rather than erode revenue? I don't believe that the information they sent to the board provided that.
No, I think the answer to that would be no. And I think the solution to that, Colette, is, I'll go back to the thing. At the end of the day, each pool has a capacity. Each pool has a certain number of hours of operation per day, and each pool has a number of days that it operates per year. So that rate that you charge per person, and it's kind of a complex thing, has to be, and I'm gonna use what I really think it is, the best estimation from the management team on who uses it, how frequently, and how long, and base the rate structure on that. And the first time you go through it, it's going to be a guessing game. Because, you know, some people go and they camp out at the pool starting at 10 a.m. and they're there until closing. Some go for 2 hours, some go for 4. But when you're in that pool, you're using up that capacity. By the way, a 3-year-old counts as much as a 93-year-old.
So this is what I think is really interesting about this discussion. And it makes me think of a couple of things. Number one, I think Colette's question is very interesting because for the end of her question is, how do we know whether we're eroding membership or enhancing membership? Doing the classification. If we did the classification, we gather in the data. And when we look at the data of the classification, you do it, and then you figure out whether you watch the trends of that. And the other thing too is we don't have standardization across all amenities. So if you're going to do it for aquatics, why aren't we looking at that at golf? Why aren't we looking at racket center? To determine what our membership is doing, where it's going, are we meeting the needs of the people that are coming? And what's really important here is that we have statistics that show that our members in this community are not bringing the money to our amenities. Our people coming from outside are bringing that money. So we have to know who those people are. They're paying the daily rates. So looking at that, to drilling down on that is a good thing.
I would agree with you.
Let me add something. So you statement you just made is only partially true.
Yeah.
Because I think Kathleen can back me up with this and your predecessor. They've got data that says if you look at the attendance at the pool, it's predominantly people from Ocean Pines, because there was a big stink way back when, is that why are we letting people outside the community, into our pool? Because now I don't get a chance to go in there because we're at capacity. And so they did an exhaustive analysis. I know Kathleen still does it. And Kathleen, correct me if I'm wrong, it hasn't really changed. It's predominantly, I dare give a percentage.
Overall, it's approximately 10%. If you go pool by pool, at the yacht club, for example, it's 4%.
Yeah.
At the sports court pool, it's significantly higher, I think, because that's year
So-
round. It's, when you Google it, that's the first pool that comes up.
Right.
But the data does not support that aquatics.
Yeah, I'm saying for aquatics. Yeah.
Is being overrun by
Right.
non-residents. The residents of this community use the swimming.
Right. And to my point, so aquatics generates a significant portion of its revenue based on attendance by members of the Ocean Pines community. I think this is,
Appreciate that clarification.
and the other thing too is with regard to this, I'm going to support your statement regarding the fact that, okay, how do we know whether a change will either enhance or erode? Well, I mean, it's like a budget projection, I mean, clearly you're projecting based on reasonableness and understanding the operation, other conditions that would influence the decision that you arrive at. And I think at this point, you're looking at the performance of the aquatics department. And I think it's one of our responsibilities to at least entertain the idea of making any changes that could perhaps help with revenue, so the idea would be, I'm not afraid to at least try it, especially, as long as it's not something frivolous and risk bearing, the idea is like, we look at this and say, and maybe you do it for a year after the planning. I feel better now that Ruth Ann said, hey, by the way, we do have some flexibility within the system to do this. So the idea would be, maybe give it a try, and it will provide the results after a year that, that we can look at and say, hey, was it a success? Was it, sort of, standard business process and never really changed anything, or was it a failure? And I think that I, for one, would at least look at that, because doing nothing, well, that's not creative. I mean, I don't think that lends itself to the idea of trying to get to a point where under, what's the words in the governing documents are, the amenities are run in a business-like manner. Okay. I think
Break
that's-
even or better.
Yeah. And so I think that those kinds of things we should consider. I don't think there's too much risk. And I turn to John and Steve and say, if I'm, sort of assuming that there isn't too much risk associated with it, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't see any real risk other than the adoption, I think the other part of it too is like when any change is made, you have that transition time period, all right, where you're looking at going, some people, oh, I didn't hear about that, or I'm not really sure about it, so on and so forth. And it takes a while for the community to absorb that information and then start using it in the way it was intended to. So, you face all that, but I still think it's a reasonable approach to say, maybe we should look at it and see if it's getting beeped at. No.
Yeah.
The reasonable approach that we should look at that, and as long as there's not risk to the association, I think it's probably what we should be responsible to do.
Yeah, and I would support the idea of using the data that we get by making a change to make future projections. And it's good to know that it's doable, but I think the other thing we do have to consider is the administrative burden that this experiment would place on the
Yeah,
state.
that would be part of the analysis to say, Ruth Ann, give me, true to form, is this going to add X number of hours of administrative overhead that would be, detrimental or what? And so you don't have to answer that, that'd be part of the analysis. So, yeah, you didn't have to answer that. Don't even make a face. It's okay.
But I think practically,
Outside the community using them?
Yeah.
So we have to be open to,
501c, yeah.
yeah, we're 501, we have to be open. We have to be open
Yeah, we cannot restrict.
to the outside.
We want that, right? We want to.
To a degree, sure.
Right?
You have to, yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yes and no. We have to balance the capacity with the revenue generation. If we want our pools to be available to the people who purchase memberships. And so the capacity limits the number of people that can use the pool. And so if we are overburdening the capacity with people who are not association members or not pool members, we have a problem.
And Kathleen, you made a statement that there is some sort of ratio that the number of people in the pool to the amount of lifeguards that are there. And so, if let's say you had a lifeguard calling sick, obviously that could affect the capacity of that pool for that day. Yeah, so there's another variable.
You have a capacity for in the water, you have a capacity for on the deck, and then you have Maryland state law as far as required
Mhm.
certified lifeguards that are there per person. So there's a lot of moving parts.
Yeah, okay. So,
Yeah, and Becky, I think the analogy for the Racket Center is that your capacity for parking is limited and it's not going to get bigger because of the Corps of Engineers, the limitations that are placed on this being a wetland. And so if we are overburdening the parking with people who are not members of the center, members of the association, then that's viewed as a problem by the members who want to use it. So same thing, capacity issues are a factor at all of our members, all of our amenities.
Ultimately going to affect revenue.
Right.
so practically, John, to do this, for this year's out of the question,
Right.
okay? We do have data, but we don't have extensive data mining. So the way that we can manipulate that data is limited to what we have. Would you be willing to set up a work group to study this
Sure.
and to see what the administrative burden would be, the way that we'd manage the process, and what the potential fee structure would be? With the intent of it being available for the next budget session.
Sure.
well, hey, Frank, just maybe great idea.
Linda, Steve.
Rather than a work group, why don't we just task the aquatics committee with doing that? I mean, they're an advisory committee. Let's get
Right.
them involved. That's why we have
That's how it
advisory
should work.
committees. I would
Right.
push that down there based on this discussion. We really want you guys to sort of get your feet wet on this one and really kind of look, and you'll have access to, and I'm gonna, as long as they clear it through John, to other people within the aquatics
Right.
department and the membership department that can
Right.
help with the analysis. So, yeah.
They're gonna need a lot of, they'd need a lot of information. I think they'd be willing.
We will
to-
answer the questions and whatever they need. Sure, absolutely. We'll support
Well,
that.
sure, we
It has to
can-
come through the liaison to the board to me and then.
So why don't we just make sure, as long as everybody's fine, we'll make a commitment to say, we want to ask the aquatics committee to look at, all of these issues and with the intent of having something in concrete for next year's budget.
And I'll put together the team or the support, whether it's different cycles of your study. Yes. Good. All right.
John.
Yes.
Stuart.
Stu.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I don't understand why we couldn't get something together for this coming season. We're 4 months away from the pools going into full swing and let's say, May, June, like June-ish. I don't see why we couldn't add a category. Listen, this is best businesses to try to mine data. Let's get data. Let's put together a plan so that we can have another category of swim. It's not like it's not brain surgery.
Well, okay, so, but Stuart, I don't think it's exactly, because the first thing, if you're going to have, you'd have to start with this premise. If you're going to have a couples membership, then the couples have to come in and get the right identification card. If you're going to have it for an extended family, then the family has to get the card. If you're going to do it for grandchildren, the grandchildren have to be in and they have to get the card. And
Well, I'm not saying do like a half a dozen new categories. Like, let's add one new category this time and do the data mining and the work to add maybe other categories like the grandchildren and that. But if we add a couples program in now, we can actually sell more swim memberships, see how that works, and then work towards adding other categories in.
I
for
could
next year.
support, I would certainly support that if we would all agree to support John and his team when he got the blowback in May and June, when people showed up at the pool and they didn't have the right identification. And they said they didn't know about it. Because if I were a betting person, I'd bet a whole lot of money that that's going to happen.
Well, we just have to be better with our communication to our membership that we, that has to be. We have to be better at our communication. Weekly email blasts. There's a bunch of different ways.
No disagreement, but then the people that also get those email blasts have to be better at reading them.
Well, listen, there's only so much responsibility. You got to take responsibility as an individual.
A small point if I can. The Aquatics Committee, I believe, meets once a month. You'd almost have to have them meeting weekly, not to mention using staff resources. There's a lot of proposals out there about how you tier all these different memberships, who's got to get a card, who can't get a card, how you deal with renters. I don't see it as something that's going to get done this year. In reality, we're sort of foisting a pretty heavy responsibility. The Aquatics Advisory Committee to come up with a proposal that would first go through a vetting process between the staff and the board. So I think anything we're doing, we're looking forward beyond this year to get it done. I just think there's a lot out there and you're asking them to put an awful lot of balls in the air.
And I would agree with that it's not going to be ready for this year. But I disagree that this is an undue burden to place on the Aquatics Committee. I think, a lot of our committees do a lot of work coming up with hard and fast data, doing analyses that put credibility behind the recommendations that they're bringing to us. I don't see that coming from the Aquatics Committee. And with respect to these, I think analysis and data for the kind of changes that they're asking for.
They have the ability, certainly the ability is on the committee to do it if we charge them with that.
Yeah.
And are specific on our charging. I mean, right now that has not been done, but the way that this would come down to them, I would anticipate, right, is we want you to develop a family, an individual, a couples, a grandchildren membership consistent with these parameters. And once we do that, I think they could do it, but it is a big apple and they're all interconnected and have to make logic. So that's why I think it's a year possibility, really at best. But once that trickles down, because at the end, when they come up with that recommendation and hand it to John and he has to manage it and put in that infrastructure, I don't think that's that easy of a task. Then you get to the link that Stuart brought up. I just ask you to trust me on this. I guarantee you, if we send it out in every communication that this association makes, once a day, every week for the next year, that somebody will show up on the first day, not knowing what's happening and complaining about it.
If there's and we look at desegregation of memberships down there, that would be very interesting statistics. So I'll take that back to the advisory court meeting, and I'll ask them to consider that for the following year.
Right.
Because I think that way we can track membership better, and it's all tied to revenue.
Yeah, one more. Get Stuart back.
Good.
You want me? Oh, Stuart.
Hey, you're the
Oh, no,
chair.
no,
Hang the gavel. You're running the
Stuart.
meeting.
So
Go ahead.
page
I got you, Stuart. What's up?
budget.
no, I was just echoing the idea of, listen, I still think we can get a couples membership, at least that done for this season. So that's my thought.
Okay. All right, anybody else? Okay. All right, where are we? I think Steve, let me just get back to, if I can find where I put the presentation.
I think we're on page 3.
On capital, I think.
Yeah, I'm on capital.
All right, so we're up to Linda. I'm sorry. So the capital summary, Linda will take you through that.
Okay, brief overview, just grouping them together. Aquatics, 69,000, in capital. It's just a normal standard, capital that's put in every year. Club has a total of 12,000. That is for DMA study, tables and chairs that need to be replaced. Clubhouse, the same per the DMA study, 12,900. Golf maintenance, we do have the irrigation design. The irrigation was scheduled to be replaced this year. This was to start last year, but we did take that out. But we do have the golf irrigation design put in for golf maintenance. Total 34,275 total for golf maintenance. Public Works has a total of 65,100. That is per the DMA study as well. Recreation, a total of 170,000 for DMA plus a few additional items, including the Pintail Park Pier and Recreation Pier, and Yacht Club, part of the total of 36,000 for miscellaneous items.
Okay, let me just add a couple things. First, any questions on that before I kind of tie this into what Steve's doing and everything else? Okay, so Linda went through about $400,000. During budget and finance, even with the board review and everything, we talked about the $800,000, which would be the first step for the irrigation. That would have been in here. But discussions with the director of golf maintenance. And to be honest with you, what's going on now, as far as logistics and supply chain and even contractors, we believe that we could not get the individual or a contractor to start it this year, but we are pushing it into the next year. So that would have been 800,000 that we would have come forward to here that was still would be needed, but that would be next year. The other item I just wanted to add to this, which we're doing now, when I talked about it at the beginning, and we've talked about it during the year in budget updates, board updates, and received approval, is around somewhere between 550, 600,000. We had to call it emergency or whatever, but we came forward with for the marina docks, which would have had to be replaced over the next year or two anyway, because we have to redo and replace and update all the gas pipelines, which we're working on. That's about $600,000. So that would have brought us up to what I would normally see, the 1.8 million. So I just wanted to tie that together, put it in perspective. We're already to 550 for the docks and the gas that's already put in. And then obviously then the irrigation, which will be a discussion for next year. We did put $15,000 for a review of the system and to go forward. That is in the golf budget. Okay, good. Any other questions before Steve goes to reserve full funding analysis? Okay, so
I have one quick.
already,
Talking about capacity and revenue, and you just brought up the marina. I thought that your proposed move up raising the beach parking 60% was totally on point. Again, capacity and raising revenue. It followed a simple economic supply and demand model while generating a surplus that we could use for the beach club. And I believe in the future, we are going to have some expensive renovations there. I also believe with the marina that that same 16% increase should be applied to the marina. OP has made a considerable investment in the marina, the docks, the security cameras, the gas line. So I think this would be an opportunity for the board to consider that bold move. If the wait list has more boats on it than slips available, I believe Ocean Pines is charging too little.
Okay, thank you. As you all, so Budget and Finance did take that increase down for the beach park, and I believe it came in around 7%. So they did take that down on us. We did have slight increases in the slips. I think it was 3%. But I understand that. And also now I remember what it was on the lane with the director for the racket sports at $90,000. The Budget and Finance told me, or their guidance is certainly out there. We did raise it up to the 45,000 with the benefits and all that I discussed. That was what they approved. They did not, and I believe they highlighted that. They did not approve the 90,000. But that was discussed. Budget and Finance approved the 45,000, which was an increase from where we were at. So there was a process on that. And that's what came out of that. Okay. All righty. So with that now, I did talk about reserves. Steve's going to, this is usually an analysis. It's not necessarily a report, but it is an analysis that I do. Steve does it for me now. That'll tie in all your reserves for you, as well as the funding levels and the percentages that Budget and Finance recommended. And we go out about 5 years, sometimes 7, and Steve will show you where we're at, so you can put it all into context of where we're going to be. Steve?
Thanks, John. So that schedule, as John mentioned, does tie everything together for the general replacement. Obviously, we've alluded to the need for reserves to, be significant to fund emergency type projects, et cetera. The beginning balance that I have on there for FY 22-23 is obviously the audited number of $4.7 million. Our estimated spending, which includes the emergency dock replacement, fuel pumps, it's about $1.4 million. So it has those numbers built in there. That gets us down to an estimated spend. It's about small print, about $5.3 million for the end of this year. Now, the interest is, I guess, a big change that obviously with market conditions have started to certainly realize much more income on our investments. So we took numbers up. So you can see the projection that we expect to recognize about $140,000 this year, $160,000, and then we conservatively put in $100,000 for the next 5 years. But as we alluded to earlier, within the discussion, the target rate is 22 to 28%. You can see in the yellow highlights that we certainly achieve that, and we are escalating, climbing a little bit each year. So all the way up by FY 28-29, we go all the way up to 42%. You can see where the $399,000 in estimated spending for the 23-24 budget is factored in there. And then we estimate that we have $6.8 million in reserves at the end of next budget year, $6.8 million, which is about 30%.
Sure. Stuart. Oh, Stuart, I'm sorry, I think you had it.
Yeah, I had a question. Just going back to like beach parking. I seem to think that even though we need to increase our revenue, this is an inflationary time where a lot of people are having a difficult time affording things, period. I don't think looking to increase the price of some of these amenities is a good idea. You're pricing people out. Yeah, listen, there's a waiting list at the marina. Do what you want there. Parking, I don't think we should raise that, you know? I think we should hold the line on increasing the rates that we charge our members because of this inflationary period. We come back and visit it next year when we're not in an inflationary area. That's just my thought.
Okay.
John, question for Steve.
Sure.
Using this reserve funding analysis here, and I'm looking at the yellow line, highlighted line versus the last blue line that have all the yeses in it. Okay. And I want to make sure that I understand this and everybody understands it. That 22%, at least 22%, is now required by Maryland law. Is that correct?
Technically, the Maryland law requires the reserve study, which highlights that we should have an analysis similar to this. So the 22% is not highlighted per Maryland law.
Okay.
So
Is that-
I jump in there too,
Yeah.
since I did this thing. So yes, the Maryland law, it did come out last year. Yes, they said to look at your reserves. Steve's right. They want everybody. They want you to have a study. We have a study. We've been doing a study. We're ahead of the curve there. They want something like this analysis Steve mentioned. We've been doing this since I got in here, if not before when I was on BNF. Our percentages, they don't specifically say 22%. That 22, 28 was guidance by BNF when I was back on it. Prior to 19, Doug, if you want to jump in, you're on the board or whatever, board approved it. Now BNF is saying to me, or saying to us, not to me, to us, hey, we want you to be in that 30 to 35. The board did that review. I mean, obviously the board's going to still have to vote on that. It's going to affect more down the road. I spoke to the lead at DMA. What's his name?
Doug Green.
Doug Green. I always call him Mo Green. Doug Green, I told him where we're at. Steve and I went through this with him. He thought we were okay. As you know, he was in here. He did a review about a year and a half ago late. I am going to bring him in the next budget cycle. But with the numbers being where they're at, if the board and everybody else is good with it, I'm not going to have that as a priority. I think we're well ahead of the curve.
Right. So to be clear, the Maryland law then does not require, which I thought initially there was some chatter or some discussion that the people that do the DMA study make a recommendation on the level of reserves that you should have, and that's what the Maryland law was going to require.
Yeah.
And in some cases require that be brought up to there immediately. Is that correct or incorrect?
I think so.
I don't know about this immediately. It could be over time. Obviously, the DMA or that outside independent is a part of it. That is why I called Mr. Green along with Steve, and I believe Linda was in there. I went through our scenario here. He believed we were good, but certainly that we would do a review possibly next year or the year after that.
I mean, I'm perfectly fine with it. I just want to know what our risk was in terms of like what's going on in Florida with that collapse where
Yeah,
somebody's
that's what-
coming in and
That's what
saying,
prompted the whole thing.
you have to be at 42% tomorrow or.
So let's put that all in perspective, right? Look, there are homeowners associations, there are other types of associations or whatever, where they basically go bare bones. And it's basically, there's no money in reserve, in reserves or in your return earnings, because every dollar goes back. And I've done reviews for people who have bought townhomes or whatever in New York. And I say to them, I just want to let you know, if there's any type of repairs, that's going to be an additional special assessment because their balance sheet is there. That ties in with the other questions we had here and where we want to be. We've built it up over the last 4 years. But that's one of the reasons why, not to take it down, but you can't, You want to jump in?
Yeah.
That ties it all together, Doug. to be
Yeah,
honest
yeah,
with you.
going back for history, going back a couple of years is when we brought Doug Green in from DMA.
Right.
There was a couple of different funding models for reserve funding.
Right.
And we chose the one that would be gradually, a certain percentage over time.
We've done it.
And we passed a motion, I think it was 4 years ago, where it said that we wanted to, get on this path and move to the point where we are, adding to the reserve funding based on, an approved, thought
Right.
on that. And I'm 100% in support of this, and I don't think there's any adjustments. Just out of just morbid curiosity, though, at some point, I really would like to bring, the DMA back in.
Okay.
At what point, even if, I don't know if it's even relevant, at what point could you be overfunding reserves? And I'll just leave it at that. It's like, I'd want to ask that question, because you could take that money, invest it elsewhere and get a better return on investment and so on and so forth. But I think that's a question that probably needs to be asked maybe next year, because
Next year.
because the target was 22 to 28%. We're at 30. Right. So should we get to 32? Sure. But, should we get to 42? I don't know. I would ask the question to say, is there a better investment vehicle over the next 3 years that could, assist us in a different way that could end up at some point being transferred into reserves?
Right. Okay, so we'll definitely put on a work with BNF, Steve will, and then we'll talk to Mr. Green. Okay, good. That ties it all together. Keep good, Joe. And Linda. Any other questions on that? That's a big one. I think that is there another? Yeah, we're good. So, okay, so that's our presentation. We are here to answer any other questions. I think, Steve.
I just want to cover two things that I think have gotten a lot of interest among members. Most of it out there in the ether. The first is a discussion that had been percolating about what were referred to as business licenses. I understand
Oh,
the
business
term, but there was a term about business licenses. Is that in or out of the budget as you're recommending?
It was my understanding, you want to say something?
Well, yeah, I think what we had sort of informally agreed that, based on our discussions, that there really wasn't a lot of support from the board on that. And so I shared that with John. So the idea is that, unless there's a change of heart, I think we should just go ahead and, take that out of there.
So it's out. Okay.
It's out. It's out.
Second question deals with beef collection, which has also gotten a lot of discussion.
Okay, no, that's.
I'm not going to put you on.
He was 2 minutes from leaving. 2 minutes. Go ahead, I'm sorry, Steve, go ahead, Steve.
John Mike, no. I understand, and we discussed this at the board review. My own view on that is anecdotally, I think there's an issue that needs to be addressed. I'm bothered by there's a real lack of data, including cost comparisons as to if we continue the current path, we make changes, if we brought seasonal employees on, all that sort of stuff. My request, and at this point, I understand it's in the budget. Is that correct?
So defined in the budget, we did not take the budget down for it, but we said that we were not, that we were going to adjust on how we approach the leaves.
Okay.
We reallocated that money and we talked a lot about it. We anticipated the question. I mean, Eddie, if you want to jump in, but we're estimating it's probably 40, 50,000 between the truck and everything else. And there is a lot of man hours on it, but we're keeping it in the budget, but we would not be doing that piece.
But you're going to adjust the practice, the real life practice. Is that fair? Okay.
But I didn't lower the assessment by saying, okay, I'm reallocating that money to something else.
I would just hope that next year, when we go through the process again, we have better data and we can identify, for instance, how much revenue is realized from buying these permits and how flexible the program is and some sense as to whether or not it's working in the community. I understand data on this is really difficult. I understand a lot of the feeling is more anecdotal. I get all that. But so just want to make sure we're going to take a year-long leap. I prefer to know more next year.
Right.
We can visit this again.
Yeah, as a homeowner, my husband and I we've had
very spirited discussion.
I'm sure.
So my husband just had a rotator cuff surgery done.
Oh, I had it too.
Okay, this is the test. So I raked the 15 to 20 bags of lawn this year. I stored them under the pontoon boat until I could get to the yard. Yard was open a month and I had to get to the yard in the time that it was open. And there were several days I went, damn, it's not open today, or damn, I just missed the time. I thought to myself, number one, I'm young enough to do this now. In 10 years, I might not be able to do that. So we maintain our yard right now. Two, what if I was a working person and I had to get those bags down to that yard and I was working 9 to 5? So if I'm gonna buy a permit, I want to be able to get down to the yard. And I want to be able to get down to the yard in a reasonable amount of time because I had my bags under my pontoon boat since September.
Do you have a Republic?
No, we take our garbage to the dump.
Oh, okay.
So I don't have Republic. And I have 70-year-olds and 80-year-olds on my court who are raking leaves and putting in the bags. There are 4 bags a week for Republic. And I also have people in our area that don't do anything. And I have one house right now that has their leaves lined all along their culvert, and that's where they're going to stay all year, whether they are picked up or not. They're just going to stay there.
What's the name of your street again? I know you told me before.
I'm on Carriage Lane, so I'm off Windjammer.
Jim Carriage Lane.
So here's my concern. When we have a community, even on our website, it says we're what? 30,000 wooded acre community, we're going to have leaves. And we're going to have some people that can pick them up. And we're going to have some people that can afford the yard service. And we're going to have some people that physically can't do it anymore.
So I have a question. So when you do it, you must have a big yard, right?
No,
Or you have a small yard?
I have a more than an average size lot, but I generated 15 to 20 bags.
So you take all those leaves and you rake them up to the road and you put them in the bags?
Yeah, I rake them all.
So with the bags, oh, you said you don't have Republic, okay.
I've never seen the truck come down my street.
Public?
Oh, our truck.
Oh, our truck.
Leaf truck.
Yeah, on bag leaves, we go through the pines weekly. We can cover the whole pines in 1 week. If they're out by the curb, we won't go through the yard and take
I
it out.
understand.
They have to be out there.
I understand, and it certainly could happen while I'm playing 3 hours of pickleball. But and this is my first year full time. So, but I have not seen the truck on my street.
Okay.
So,
All right, we have our address. Yeah.
John, couple of points. So let me understand what we're doing this year. Is the yard, are we going to have permits for homeowners? And is the yard going to be available by calling on demand for those homeowners? Is that still in the budget?
Right, Eddie. I mean, you've been sitting here all morning. Go ahead.
That's still in?
Depends on what you all decide.
He's a politician.
He's been doing this 20 years.
The way we're putting it out there, we're still gonna be open in the fall, or time.
Okay.
Which is Thanksgiving through the first of the year.
Right.
We will still open the month of May for spring cleanup.
Okay.
If you're a resident and we decide to go a route with a card, you can call anytime other than those 2 times and say, hey, I've got some debris, I've got my card, can you meet me there? Because we get into liabilities with the yard, just like people go in there because we have equipment in there and people moving.
Right.
I need to have somebody meet them.
Right.
If we're open those 2 months, there's one person dedicated that stays there the whole time. I don't have that all year round.
Right. So I think they're going to pay for the card, right?
Yep.
Okay, paying for the card and having it available on a phone call on demand, I think is a great idea. Okay, because a lot of people that have moved in around me to try to clean up in March or maybe later in February or early in April, and there's no place to go.
Right.
Okay. That will limit contractors going in the yard, correct?
Contractors is a whole nother subject.
Yeah.
It's hard to control a contractor. Me and John had this discussion prior. I don't have a problem, say if somebody hired a contractor to do the yard and they say you hired a contractor, but you want a sticker for yourself.
Mhm.
I want to use it. You call us and say, hey, this contractor's doing work for me. He's bringing 3 loads of leaves. They're from my yard. Okay, but we have to have that kind of clarification, because if the contractor finds out that he could just say, oh, Mr. Daly said, I'm still hauling for Mr. Daly 20 loads down the road. He could be hauling them in from anywhere.
By the way, I agree with that if you can manage it, because, and let me assure you, Mr. Daly doesn't live in Bayside and I don't live in Glen Riddle. Okay?
Exactly.
And look, okay, I've dealt with contractors the last half of my career and have been one. A smart contractor is going to use a free service to reduce his cost and not reduce your cost as a homeowner.
Right.
So I guarantee you, we're getting a fair amount of leaves from Glen Riddle and Bayside.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you can't control that work coming. They tell you they're working in here, and that's why we need some type of control on that. And I guess John brought up the option, like, if we have a fee for a contractor, we talked about that too. If we do a contractor fee, it's got to be compatible with what they're paying at the landfill or somewhere else, or else we're going to get everybody's leaves.
Right, absolutely, absolutely.
What everybody else is charging on the market.
Absolutely, no free service there. And then that leaves the third thing, just a comment with the leaves. So I drove down Ocean Parkway from the North Gate to basically the South Gate yesterday, okay? And this is the dilemma with leaves, understanding the demographics of the community, understanding the ditches are supposed to be for filtration, not drainage to begin with. And I'm not sure that you're going to convince me that leaves in a ditch hurt filtration. If you think if it's a drainage ditch, I'll buy it, but a filtration ditch, yeah, it's a little shaky. I think we either have to do leaves right or not do them at all. And doing them right could be a hefty boost in the assessment, because again, I have more specifics because I have a 0.23 acre lot and I have probably 30 trees and I can easily do 20 bags of leaves. Okay. The problem with doing it right or not doing it at all is basically boils down to those leaves don't fall until early December. So collecting them, this year I had somebody come in and do it off the roof. Collecting them before Thanksgiving is a waste of time because more leaves fall. And that leaves you basically at the end of the first week in December to the new year. We would have a lot of contractors in here doing a lot of leaves in that time frame. Just a comment. If you're going to do it right, or don't do it at all. Because doing it right is going to be a hefty increase, a big hefty increase.
And I think that goes back to the point that I was trying to make at the outset. And the other point about the various members in terms of age and health ability and everything else. I understand what's going to happen this year. And as I said, when the board reviewed this, I think we are operating with a lack of hard data to rely on. It's all anecdotal, almost all anecdotal. And I understand there's a cost involved. I'm not arguing about any of that. But I am suggesting that you have a program that is fairly flexible. And I use myself as an example. I don't rake my leaves because my knees are not going to take that. But I do have a year-round lawn care company that comes in. He does my yard twice late in the fall and into the winter to pick up all the leaves. And he's got a big vacuum. He picks them all up. He does both sides of the drainage ditch, by the way, all the way around my corner property, right up to the property line. I have no problem buying a permit. And I will arrange with Public Works for my guy to come in and dump my leaves at your site. I have no problem with that. But I do think you need to have a program that's flexible, that meets all of the concerns about the populace. And I haven't heard one yet. So my request, we're not going to deal with this substantively this year's budget. But next year, I think we need better data. We need to know cost of the permits. We need to know whether or not we can just charge a rate similar to the county dump. We need to know how many people are availing themselves of this. I mean, I think there's a lot to work here. But all I'm suggesting is you have a program in place for the year that's fairly flexible to meet everybody's needs, including our budget needs.
Right, so Obviously, if that's what the board tells me to do, that's what I do. And I want to make that clear. And I understand somebody may not have Republic.
It's really a difficult, this is.
Hold on, let me just finish, please. I've been listening. So Republic picks up the bags. We pay for that. They pick up the bags. Why are we circumventing that and having it in our budget? They pick up the bags. So you have a ditch, you rake them up, you put them in the bags, or what Eddie's saying, what we're saying is, if you're taking from the ditch, right, you bag it, you can bring it to whatever. Right now, we pick that up. The situation here that we're experiencing, and, you know, if you want numbers, you know, we will do that at time, cost, and everything. It's not a service for somebody to blow out all the leaves from their entire yard into the road. Hold on, let me finish. I mean, if you want to stop me, you're a board member, I'll stop.
Oh, go ahead.
That's not what this is. That's not even what's in the budget, but that's what we're doing. But that's not the policy or the procedure or what, but that's what's happening. And I just, every time I hear, and I understand what you're saying, I'm, you know, whatever you want, but I don't hear anybody addressing that. And then you say, well, how many are there? If you want that, I'll put a person out there, we'll drive around and count them up. It's significant. It's significant. So that's it. If you want all leaves in this place and everything, and you want us to do it, all right, then we're gonna have to put that in the budget. We're gonna have to figure, that's big. I heard Frank say that's a big number. Now, the park, Eddie doesn't pick up one leaf in the park. 508 homes, 6, whatever, I'm not gonna. They have a service, they do it. Nobody's in there. The ditches are the cleanest in Ocean Pines. Now, granted, there's other reasons or whatever. You know, we can look at number of trees per house or whatever, but there's nothing in there. They take care of it. We're doing more than we should be doing, or what we budgeted, or what the plan was, or whatever it was 10, 20 years ago. That's what we're saying. And the other thing is people just ignoring the Republic, where we pay for that. When we pay for the Republic. Now, I get it if somebody, but you know, then we're going to come up with this other stuff, but that's it. I mean, if you want more, of course, we'll try to get the data.
I'm not disagreeing with you.
No, I know, but I'm just saying.
And I'm pointing out to you, though, as someone else already said, not everybody rakes and bags their leaves. I'm not saying that Ocean Pines should come in and vacuum up everybody's leaves year round.
I didn't say you did. I heard that somewhere else, right? I'm just.
I understand that due to cost, you need to set up maybe a different program, to broadly speaking, that takes into account various things. All I'm saying is I'd like to see more next year. And at the risk of repeating myself, we sort of discussed this at the board session. I have no problem buying the permit. I just want to make sure my lawn guy can come in and make use of it. So provided we set up the appointment.
Let's address that. I mean, this is not a hard thing to address. That'll be a takeaway from this meeting. And
I agree with you. There are people abusing what's going on right now. We don't know how much.
Those are the reports I get.
Right. And you can see it, but by the same token, there's also people whose lawns are immaculately clean year round.
Right.
There are people who haven't picked up a leaf in 10 years probably.
That's their right.
But, you know, you just have to skin the cat a few different ways in order to make it work. And I'm hoping we have a better base to proceed on next year. That's what I'm saying.
Understand what he wants on this base, because let's give it to him. We should be able to give it to him.
To explain this a little bit further, this program was started 25 years ago. When this place was not built out, there was a lot of vacant lots. That's when they started this program. Public Works went and raked the ditches and used this vac machine to pick them up. And they got the residents involved at the time. If you help us rake the ditch out, we'll suck them up. Well, now it's become a built out community, and people are taking advantage of it and raking their whole yards.
All the way to the street.
And that's
picking up a little bit out of the ditches, and that's it.
So then again, so let me just finish. So Steve, look, it's the board. If the board wants us to keep it in and to continue doing it, then obviously we'll do it. I mean, we have to do it. We're giving you all this. If you want us to, the PC's asking about what they're asking about the permits, quite honestly, we should be able to come back with that from taking.
When we get met, it would be more the board left to decide the amounts. I mean.
Oh, well, let's give them a recommendation. We'll give them a
We can
recommendation.
look at some recommendations.
We'll give you the recommendation. You're right. That's what, so we should have did that. Usually the board sets the fees and all that stuff, but on our end, we'll clean that. We'll do that. Okay.
Okay, so first of all, two things. One is the permits. The other question that came to mind is Steve's example. He's got a lawn service, so Steve buys the permit, right, to allow this guy to take his leaves into the yard. So here I am, the contractor. What do I have? Do I have a sticker? All right, so maybe I have a sticker, and the process is, hey, if the guy's got a sticker, he can dump the leaves. If I'm a contractor and I got that sticker, I'm going to go over to that guy's house, and I'm going to go over to that guy's house, and I'm going to go over to that guy's house, and I'm just going to continue to use this one sticker. There's no differentiator there. So, again, I don't have the answer, but I think we need to take that into consideration, because at that point, if we're charging, all right, for a permit in order to address the dumping fees, right, from our yard away, we just lost, if he does it for 5 guys, we just lost 4 revenue streams. All right, so I'd want to make sure that we address that. The other part of it is knowing that the description of, we've got people that are young and strong and break the leaves. We got people that, just break the ditches and are true to the, what it's supposed to be. We got people that rake their whole yards. We got people that can't rake. There's no program that's a one size fits all. Okay. We just got to come to grips with that. At the end of the day, you need to drive a stake in the ground and say, this is what we offer. Here's the cost to the association. All right. Some people will be perfectly fine with it. Other people will want to draw and quarter you. Okay. And that's unfortunately, when we sit up here, that's the kinds of things we have to deal with. And I know,
Okay, can I?
but, and again, so at the end of the day, yes, we could struggle, I think, with the analysis, but at the end of the day, I do not believe in any way, shape or form that we're going to get a program or a number of programs that's going to fit every single condition that we encounter. I think the responsibility is to say, here's what we've got. Okay, you move into Ocean Pines. Quite frankly, and I hate to be totally insensitive, but I'm not required to pick up the leaves out of your yard. Okay, it's not part of the requirement. It's not the DRs. It's not any sales agreement. It's nothing. So unfortunately, unless we take that approach, we're going to be doomed by going, geez, you look at this big pile. My guess is it came out of his yard. I don't know. Is there a metric? Oh, if it's more than 3 inches high, it came out of the ditch. If it's, if it's less than 3 inches high, so I mean, that's very arbitrary. So, the idea is I would not be afraid to at least drive a stake in the ground and get something specific that people understand and either going to like it or they're hate it. But, at the end of the day, I would also offer that I think it's to help the community out, if it's still feasible from a cost perspective, is to continue what they were doing, picking up bags. If you don't have Republic, Ocean Pines is going to, as Eddie said, we'll go around, we could do the whole, and pick up bags. I think that's a perk of just being an Ocean Pines member as I don't want to call it a reward, but just kind of an acknowledgement of the fact that you raked up all those leaves out of your yard, we'll pick them up for you. Okay.
We have that in there. I just want to make that clear. We have it in there. We are continuing with that.
I've been listening and I would like to have an opportunity. I have a couple of things I'd like clarified. You said that what you have in the budget, this proposed budget, is 40 to 50,000 to address leaf collection. Is that correct?
So let me clarify too also with that. That is what it cost us with the truck and everything else. We kept it in there. That is our estimate. We met again this morning. It's not scientific, but that's about the ballpark that we feel.
Okay. And so that includes, and just want to clarify what that includes. That includes the expectation that you'll be cleaning up the leaves out of the ditches, not everybody's whole yard. And that includes having some kind of a sticker program and pickup of bags. Is that right? Is that what you have?
It's a little different. It's a little, go ahead, tell them because she's off on a couple of days.
What that eliminates, the biggest thing is the back truck.
Okay.
Just picking up the ones people rake out.
Okay.
The bag leaves, we're still going to accommodate that. We'll run the truck because I can pick them up. Anybody's put their bag leaves out, we pick them up within 2 days.
Okay.
Whereas you see, you can ride by now, there's been leaves raked out since November that we're still getting to with the back truck because it is a lengthy and manpower, weather.
A lot of manpower.
Controls it.
Right.
It's just a bad process. We're not gonna sell the back truck. We're not getting rid of the back truck. What we'll do is then I'll be able to take the drainage crew out and actually go to the vacant lots in the areas and the people that don't clean their yards.
Right.
And we can clean them and actually clean the ditch and not spend time hauling the whole yard
Right.
of leaves
So-
away. We can actually concentrate.
So
on
Colette, that's key. Like I said, we're
That's what I understood to be,
reallocating.
okay.
So more, I hate to use the word value added, but we believe it'll be more value added in this, especially since, I'm gonna repeat it again, we have Republic. And if everybody can just,
Okay, so that's going to cost each property
that's our estimate.
about,
No, not each,
is fine. You know, I think that's reasonable.
okay with the 40?
Don't estimate yet.
Okay, just wanted to be clear.
Yeah, no,
But we-
this is good. This is good. No.
Now, I wanted to go back to the business registry because I don't recall the board voting on that. And I know that it sounded like Monica was in favor of it. I was in favor of it.
Talking about the business license, I'm sorry.
Business
Okay.
registry.
Sorry.
And that you were asking that ARC provide more information at our next board meeting to assist, because this is not going to be a budget impact decision. Is that correct? That this is not going to impact your budget to registry?
Right.
That you were
So
asking?
business license, correct. It was around, I think we estimated $1,850 or $2,000.
Yeah.
It's, as I mentioned in the other two reviews, it's no effect. Board says take it out, it's out.
Yeah, well, the board hasn't voted on
Right.
it. Mine now.
That was my understanding. You wait for this meeting.
Yeah. And so the ARC is prepared to provide a presentation in the February meeting for consideration by the board. And, personally, I've talked to contractors who would love to be on a registry like this and are, feel like $75 or $50, whatever it costs each year, is well worth it. And my understanding is that the CPI department is also fully in favor of it because it reduces their administrative burden overall to have this. So I just want to be clear, this has not been decided by the board yet.
That's my understanding.
Okay.
Yeah. Doug, yeah.
And
Yeah,
then,
Yeah, remember, we
okay,
vote on the budget as a whole, okay?
I get,
So if there's something that's going to affect the budget in the February meeting, then let's bring it up at the February meeting and decide whether or not we want to take it in and out of the budget. You've been around long enough.
yeah, but
Some things get taken in and out of the budget based on some emails back and forth that are very informal, and other things really require a vote to say this is something specific.
impact the budget. That's what
No, it won't impact the budget at all.
January.
No.
And so you had said earlier that it was off the table because the census was that it was not
If
supported,
you want to,
but we did not vote. So I would like us to vote after we get more information.
yeah, that's,
Okay.
no problem.
So, John, so maybe, so you're gonna proceed with the permitting, the yard permit and the call.
If you direct the GM to go that route, yes.
Okay, we direct it. Hypothetically, let me ask
We
you
just got to
another.
come up with the price for them.
Yeah.
We figured they
You're gonna
had.
come back with a-
We should have did it, David.
You're gonna
That's
come
on
back with
me.
a recommendation
Yeah,
and
we'll get
and
that.
how to control it. By the way, you might want to give them two coupons, one for the spring and one for the fall that they give their contractor and collect it at the gate.
Yeah.
Kind of simple way to do it, but second thing, hypothetically, okay, for the next budget. Is it feasible or doable, remotely doable to say, you're gonna pick a section as Public Works in Ocean Pines and you're gonna clean out the ditches? Just tell the people that live in section 10, don't touch the ditches. Okay, use contractors to do it and come back in a budget and say, if you want to eliminate leaf removal from Public Works, we're going to do it right. We're going to hire outside contractors, take that cost per lot and multiply it by 8,470. How many come up by Triple Crown at that point in time and say, this is going to be the effect on your assessment? And make it, we'll do it this way, or we won't do it at all.
You could do it that way, but it's like you said, it's gonna be costly.
It's a big.
That's okay. I mean, knowing the information is better than guessing at it, and getting the information is better than estimating it. Do it for one section and just say, hey, look, if I say, do it in section 10 and tell the people in section 10, don't touch the ditch, we're gonna do it with contractors, I know you're gonna go and find half the ditches cleaned. Okay, out of force of habit. Still give the estimate. It's the best we can do for the next budget. And then we'll have an all or none kind of scenario. Because, you know, driving down Ocean Parkway, it's 50-50 right now. And, you know, let's do it right or don't do it at all.
Okay. No other questions? It's approximately 1:30. I would say that this town hall is completed and done. I just want to say personally, thank you for everybody that had questions. This is good stuff. Hopefully we answered all your questions, or at least some degree.